Imagine having the entire weight of a small motorcycle dropped, like, directly onto your wrist.
Just straight down.
Yeah, straight down. And now imagine that happening while you're spinning upside down. You're completely blind to where the floor is, and you have exactly 1/10 of a second to move your hand before you crash.
Which is just a terrifying mental image.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a stack of biomechanical data, historical archives, and honestly some wild neurological studies.
Oh, the neurology stuff is fascinating.
It totally shatters what you might think you know about human movement. We're looking into the true anatomy of breakdance, or, boboying and b-girling.
Right.
Because if you still think of this as just some cool street dance you see in old music videos, you are missing out on what is basically an insane evolutionary leap in modern athletics.
It really is an evolutionary leap. I mean, when you look at the raw data surrounding this discipline, especially how we see it now in its highly institutionalized 2026 form, it completely redefines the physical limits of the human body. We are talking about athletes who have literally reverse engineered their own neurology.
Wow.
And their skeletal structures, just to survive forces they were never, ever naturally designed to endure.
And reading through all of this source material, the only way I can even begin to wrap my head around a modern breakdancer is to think of them as this, impossible hybrid.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, because they have the cardiovascular engine of an Olympic gymnast,
Yeah.
but then they also have the fast-twitch muscle explosion of a 100-meter sprinter. And on top of that, the tactical, multi-layered thinking of a chess grandmaster.
Well, at the exact same time.
Exactly. Oh, and they have to execute all of this perfectly on beat to a song they have literally never heard before.
See, that last variable is what elevates this way beyond a standard gymnastic routine. It's what we call an open loop system.
An open loop system. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, in gymnastics, you control the environment. You know the floor, you've memorized the routine, and you pick the music.
Right, it's all planned out.
Exactly. But in breakdance, you control almost nothing except your own physiological response to a totally unpredictable environment.
Which is just wild to think about. But to really understand how we got to this point where we literally have AI analyzing joint angles in 2026, we have to go back to where it all started.
We do.
And the origin story isn't in some pristine, Olympic training facility.
Not at all.
It's in the Bronx, New York, in the early 1970s. And you really can't decouple the physical dance from the socioeconomic reality of that specific time and place.
You absolutely cannot. I mean, the physical vocabulary of breakdance is a direct manifestation of the environment it was born in.
Yeah.
You have to picture the Bronx during that era. It was suffering from severe deindustrialization.
Right. Jobs were leaving.
Jobs were gone. And the construction of the Cross Bronx Expressway had literally bulldozed right through neighborhoods.
Which is just devastating.
It was. It displaced thousands of people and destroyed local economies.
Wow.
So you had rampant urban poverty, systemic neglect, and landlords literally burning down their own buildings for the insurance money.
That part always blows my mind. The landlords burning the buildings, it was just an absolute pressure cooker.
A total pressure cooker.
And when you have that much systemic pressure on a youth population, it's going to explode into something. Historically, that explosion took the form of intense, violent gang warfare.
Right, because territory was everything.
Exactly. But out of this exact same pressure cooker, you get the emergence of hip-hop culture. You get the 4 pillars.
DJing, MCing, graffiti, and breakdance.
Yes. And what is so profound, from a sociological standpoint, is how breakdance functioned within that ecosystem.
It wasn't just a recreational pastime, It evolved as a highly structured, nonviolent alternative to those gang disputes.
A nonviolent alternative?
Yeah, it was a symbolic displacement of violence.
So instead of fighting over a street corner with knives or chains or whatever, rival crews would circle up and just battle it out on the floor.
Exactly. You still get to establish dominance.
Right.
You still get to humiliate your opponent and claim territory. But the weapon is entirely stylistic and physical superiority.
It's a ritualized combat.
That's exactly what it is. But to have ritualized combat, you need an arena.
Right. You need a ring.
And because they didn't have funding for stadiums or boxing rings or anything like that, the arena had to be built out of sound.
And this is where the architectural genius of DJ Kool Herc comes in, which completely changes the trajectory of music and dance.
It really does.
Because before this, a DJ just played a record, right?
Yeah.
From the first track to the last track.
Yeah, just let it spin.
But Kool Herc starts noticing how the dancers in the crowd are reacting. They aren't dancing with the same energy the whole time.
Hell, they're waiting.
Exactly. They are waiting for one very specific tiny fraction of a funk or soul track. They are waiting for what he called the break.
Right. The break is that fleeting moment in a song where the melody, the vocal track, the brass section, all of it just drops away.
And what's left?
All you were left with is the raw, syncopated rhythm of the drum and bass. It is the absolute peak of kinetic energy in the composition.
But so I went back and actually listened to some of these original tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the break in a song like James Brown's Give It Up or Turn It Loose is only maybe like 10 seconds long.
It's incredibly short.
So how do you build an entire dance battle culture around a 10-second window?
Well, you hack the technology. DJ Toolherc basically bought 2 identical copies of the exact same record.
Okay.
And he put them on 2 separate turntables. So as the 10-second break is coming to an end on turntable A, he physically rewinds turntable B.
Wait, like with his hands?
With his hands.
Yeah.
He cues up that exact same break to play immediately after turntable A finishes.
That is so smart.
By constantly switching back and forth between the 2 records, he takes a 10-second moment of energy and turns it into an infinite loop.
He traps time.
He literally traps time.
He creates a continuous sonic arena for the dancers to just hit the floor and stay there. And the specific parameters of this music became the biological metronome for the entire culture.
Yes, the math of the music is key here.
Right. The data says the ideal tempo is universally set between 110 and 135 beats per minute.
Right.
It's a standard 44-time signature. But the absolute anchor of this music, the thing that dictates everything the dancers do, is the massive emphasis on the second and fourth beats.
The snare drum.
The snare drum.
The snare drum is the North Star. The heavy bass lines and the intricate hi-hats, those provide the texture.
Right, the flavor.
But the snare is the physical impact point. When you watch a high-level breaker, their most explosive movements or their sudden dead stops are almost always mathematically timed to land exactly on that snare.
And we are talking about records that are still the foundational testing grounds today, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Tracks like the incredible bongo band's Apache or Africa Bambata's electro-funk anthems. But here's the variable that makes this a completely unhinged sport to me.
What's that?
In a modern battle, the DJ playing those tracks isn't just a Spotify playlist on shuffle.
Oh, definitely not.
The DJ is an active, hostile adversary.
That is a critical piece of the puzzle. The DJ in a competition is watching the dancers just as intensely as the judges are.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They are actively manipulating the intensity of the music based on the psychological state of the battle. And more importantly, they weaponize surprise.
They will intentionally try to mess you up.
They will. They might throw in a completely sudden rhythm change, or they might just cut the beat out to dead silence for a split second.
To see what you do.
Just to see if your brain and your body can react fast enough to catch it.
Which honestly leaves me totally confused as to how anyone actually competes in this.
How do you mean?
Well, if you're about to launch yourself into a spinning, upside-down acrobatic move that requires pinpoint precision, but the DJ is actively trying to pull the rhythmic rug out from under you, how on earth do you choreograph a routine?
You don't. That's the secret.
You don't choreograph.
No. If you step onto the floor with a pre-planned rigid choreography, you are extremely vulnerable.
Why?
Because the moment the DJ changes the track or drops the beat, your pre-planned routine will instantly look disconnected from the music.
Oh, I see.
And in this discipline, being disconnected from the music is the ultimate failure. It is penalized heavily.
So if there is no choreography, what am I actually watching when someone does a 2-minute run? Because it looks incredibly structured.
You are watching the...
I love that analogy. You aren't reciting a poem, you are speaking a language fluently.
Exactly.
And in breakdancing, that language is built on 4 very distinct pillars of movement. Every single thing a dancer does falls into one of these 4 categories.
Let's really unpack these.
Let's do it. Starting with the very first thing that happens in any round, the top rock.
Right. Every run begins standing up. Functionally, the top rock is serving multiple purposes simultaneously. Visually, it is the introduction.
It's the swagger.
It's exactly the swagger. It's where the dancer asserts their personal rhythm, their attitude, and their style. It's the psychological posturing before the strike.
But physiologically, there's a whole lot going on beneath the surface. It's not just bouncing around to the beat.
No, it is a rapid cardiovascular ignition sequence.
Right.
When a dancer initiates a top rock step like the Indian step, which involves rapid, syncopated cross-stepping or lateral leg swings, they're activating their anteroposterior kinetic chains.
Okay, stop right there. Anteroposterior kinetic chain.
It's a mouthful.
It sounds like something straight out of an engineering manual. What does that actually feel like in the body?
So imagine your body is a system of pulleys and cables. Antero means front, posterior means back.
Right.
To move dynamically without injuring your spine, the muscles on the front of your body, your core, your chest, your quads, have to communicate instantly with the muscles on your back.
Like your lats and hamstrings.
Exactly, your lats, glutes, hamstrings. The top rock is the process of syncing all those cables up. It's pumping blood to the extremities and priming the nervous system for the massive impacts that are about to happen.
And it's also syncing the brain to the music, isn't it?
Yes, crucial point.
You are literally taking that 110 to 135 BPM audio signal from your auditory cortex and hardwiring it directly into your motor cortex. You are establishing the baseline rhythm.
You have to, or the rest of the run fails.
But you can't win a battle just standing up. Eventually, you have to hit the floor. And that transition is the second pillar, the drop.
The drop is perhaps the most deceptive part of the dance.
Deceptive how?
Well, because if done correctly, it looks completely effortless.
Yeah.
But it actually requires immense eccentric muscle control.
Eccentric meaning the muscle is lengthening while it's contracting, right? Like slowly lowering a heavy dumbbell instead of just dropping it on the floor.
Precisely. You are taking a human body that is standing upright, often moving laterally at very high speeds.
Yeah.
And you have to transition all of that mass down to the hard floor in a fraction of a second.
Without breaking the rhythm.
Without breaking rhythm and without shattering your kneecaps.
It's like the shock absorbers on a car.
Mm.
You aren't just collapsing, you are actively absorbing and redirecting your own gravitational pull.
Yes, so you maintain all your kinetic energy.
Because the moment your hands actually touch the ground, you enter the third pillar, footwork or pass.
This is the rhythmic core of the discipline. The dancer is now fully committed to the floor.
Their weight is distributed completely between their hands and their feet.
Yes, they're crouching, constantly shifting, and navigating an incredibly complex geometry on the floor.
And the absolute foundational building block of this floor geometry is a sequence called the sixth step.
The famous sixth step.
It sounds so simple, 6 steps in a circle, but the biomechanical reality of it actually made my joints ache just reading about it.
It's punishing.
You are basically orbiting your own center of gravity.
Yes, you are moving in a circular path around a central axis. But the physiological constraints are brutal. Let's look at the upper body first.
Okay.
To support your weight while your feet are sweeping all around you, your wrists are forced into extreme hyperextension.
Right.
You are bearing dynamic loads on an angle that the wrist joint was simply never designed to support.
And then there are the hips. The data points out that the sixth step relies on closed chain rotation. What does that mean?
Think about throwing a baseball.
Okay.
Your arm swings freely through the air. That is an open kinetic chain. The energy exits through your fingertips.
Makes sense.
But in footwork, your hands and your feet are constantly trapped against the friction of the floor. That is a closed chain.
So it's like trying to violently twist a steering wheel while your hands are super glued to it. The energy has nowhere to go.
Exactly. Because the hands and feet are planted, all of that rotational torque is forced deeply into the hip sockets, the knees, and the lower lumbar spine.
Ouch.
And because footwork is executed at incredibly high speeds with zero rest, it drains the anaerobic lactic energy system almost immediately.
So the muscular burn in the thighs and shoulders must be agonizing.
It is absolute agony.
But the wild thing is, footwork is still primarily about rhythm and style. It is essentially the setup, because the third pillar is where the physics just go completely off the rails.
You got to talk about the power moves.
Yes, the power moves. This is the visual spectacle of breakdance.
Right.
When a layperson thinks of breakdancing, this is what they picture.
Absolutely. This is where the dancer largely abandons the feet and relies entirely on momentum, inertia, and centrifugal force.
The physics data we have actually maps this out with a specific equation. It's L equals I omega. Angular momentum equals the moment of inertia times angular velocity.
The dancers are intuitively doing real-time calculus with their limbs.
Real-time calculus.
The easiest way to visualize this is the classic ice skater analogy.
Oh, I know this one.
Right. When an ice skater is spinning and they pull their arms tightly against their chest, they decrease their moment of inertia.
And as a result, their rotational speed, their angular velocity massively increases.
Exactly. And when they throw their arms out, they slow down.
But a breakdancer isn't doing this standing up on a frictionless sheet of ice.
Not at all.
They are doing it horizontally, balancing on their upper back or their head or just their bare hands on a hardwood floor.
Right. Take a move like the windmill.
Okay.
The dancer is spinning continuously on their upper back and shoulders, with their legs spread in a wide V shape, sweeping in a circle just above the ground.
Or the flare, which is borrowed from gymnastics, right?
Yes, where the dancer supports their entire body weight on their hands while their legs sweep in massive continuous circles around their torso.
So by manipulating the width of their legs and the angle of their hips, they are actively throttling their own rotational speed up and down to match the music.
Exactly.
But all of that spinning, all of that explosive, violent speed has to lead somewhere. You can't just spin until the song ends.
No, you have to land it.
You have to land it. And that is the fourth and final pillar, the freeze.
The freeze is the ultimate punctuation mark. It is a sudden, dead stop.
But you aren't just stopping in a normal standing position.
No, you are stopping in a highly precarious, inverted, asymmetrical balance.
Like the baby freeze, where you are balancing your entire body horizontally on two hands, with your knee resting precariously on your elbow.
Right.
Or the hollow back, which is just visually terrifying to me.
It is an extreme position.
You are completely inverted, standing on your hands, but your legs aren't straight up. You push your shoulders far forward and arch your back to the absolute extreme so your legs are hanging down over your head.
Your center of gravity is completely displaced outside of your base of support.
Which is insane.
The psychological and visual impact of a freeze comes entirely from the contrast. You're taking a human body that is moving at maximum rotational velocity in a power move, and you are demanding that it decelerates to absolute zero instantly.
Instantly.
And not only must you freeze, but that freeze must land exactly to the millisecond on the heavy snare drum of the track.
So thinking about these four pillars, top rock, drop, footwork, power moves, and freezes, I was trying to find a good analogy for how they link together.
Okay.
It actually feels a lot like martial arts combat.
Oh, I like that.
The top rock is your stance and your footwork, feeling out the opponent. The drop is shooting in, closing the distance. Footwork is the complex, close quarters grappling on the mat. The power moves are your explosive spinning strikes.
And the freeze?
The freeze is the knockout blow.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it, especially given the combat surrogate origins of the dance that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But while the structure is elegant, we have to look at the brutal mechanical reality of executing those explosive strikes. The forces generated during high-level power moves are bordering on catastrophic for the human skeleton.
Right, because we need to talk about the apex predator of power moves, the move that is considered the absolute summit of technical difficulty and raw danger.
The air flare.
The air flare.
The air flare is a masterclass in dynamic instability. It is a movement that essentially weaponizes the body's own mass against itself.
Let's try to paint a really vivid audio picture of an air flare for you, because if you've never seen it in slow motion, your brain almost rejects what it's looking at.
It's hard to process.
The dancer is in the air. Their entire body is rotating parallel to the floor like a helicopter blade.
Yes.
Their legs are split wide, swinging in huge circles.
Yes.
But their legs and their torso never touch the ground.
Never.
They are supporting this entire horizontal spinning mass purely by hopping from their right hand to their left hand back and forth over and over while walking in a circle.
The biomechanical data defines the body during an air flare as an inverted rotary pendulum.
An inverted rotary pendulum.
Right. To maintain that continuous horizontal rotation without your feet dropping to the floor, you cannot simply spin. You have to violently, continuously flex your shoulders and your hips in a highly specific sequence.
So you are using your legs as giant, heavy levers.
Exactly. By throwing those levers in a massive arc, you generate angular momentum.
But all of that momentum, all of that weight, ultimately has to channel down through one single arm every time you hop.
Yes, it does.
The data you highlighted here completely stopped me in my tracks.
Let's look at the math, because it is staggering. Let's take an average adult male dancer weighing 70 kilograms, about 154 pounds.
Okay.
If they are executing an air flare and rotating at a speed of 3 meters per second.
Which is fast, but pretty standard for an elite competitor.
The centrifugal force, combined with the downward pull of gravity, places approximately 787 newtons of pressure on a single shoulder joint. During the fraction of a second, it acts as the support pillar.
787 newtons.
It's massive.
I looked this up to conceptualize it. That is the equivalent of taking nearly double their entire resting body weight and dropping it onto a single shoulder joint.
Yes.
It's literally like balancing a small motorcycle on your wrist while that wrist is actively grinding into the floor.
And we have to emphasize that this is not a static compression.
Right, they're spinning.
It is a massive shearing force. The glenohumeral joint, the shoulder socket, and the delicate carpal bones in the wrist are absorbing that violent, twisting impact repeatedly, rotation after rotation, with zero time to recover in between.
But the weight isn't even the scariest part to me. It's the timing.
Now the transfer window.
Yes. To get from your right hand to your left hand, there is a moment where neither hand is on the ground.
The microflate phase.
Right?
To successfully launch off the right hand, rotate your torso and catch your entire falling body weight on the left hand, the dancer has an incredibly narrow window of 150 to 250 milliseconds.
150 to 250 milliseconds. That is literally a quarter of a second.
It takes longer to blink.
And if your timing is off by just 30 milliseconds, 30 thousandths of a second, the physics just fail.
They completely fail.
I want to make sure I am grasping this margin of error. If you are 30 milliseconds late,
Your center of mass shifts too far past your base of support. You cannot catch yourself. An uncontrollable crash onto your shoulder or your neck is mathematically unavoidable.
see, this is where I have to push back a little bit because this sounds functionally impossible.
It does sound impossible.
If the margin of error is a fraction of a heartbeat and you have 787 newtons of force trying to crush your collarbone, how do they not just collapse every single time?
It's a great question.
I mean, think about driving a manual transmission car. If you release the clutch 30 milliseconds too early, the engine bucks and stalls. Here, if you miss the clutch, your entire body violently crashes into hardwood.
Right.
You cannot consciously think, okay, right arm push, left arm catch in 30 milliseconds.
You are exactly right. You cannot consciously think your way through an air flare. The conscious processing speed of the human cerebral cortex is simply too slow. By the time your brain registers the visual cue to move your hand, you have already crashed.
So how do they do it?
The secret to surviving this is not in the muscles. It is in how years of repetitive trauma literally rewire the dancer's brain.
Okay, this is the pivot where we go from pure physics into deep neurology. And it is honestly sci-fi level adaptation. The very first thing the body has to hack is the inner ear.
The vestibular system.
Yes.
Inside your inner ear, you have these tiny fluid-filled loops called semicircular canals. When you move your head, the fluid sloshes around, bending tiny hairs that send signals to your brain telling it which way is up, how fast you're turning, and where you are in space.
It's the body's internal gyroscope.
Exactly.
Okay.
But normally, if you spin around incredibly fast, like a dancer doing 20 consecutive head spins or flipping continuously in an air flare, that fluid gets whipped into an absolute frenzy.
Like a washing machine.
Yes. And under normal circumstances, that frantic fluid movement creates a massive conflict with what your eyes are seeing. The result is debilitating vertigo.
Right.
Your brain actually thinks you have been poisoned. You become intensely dizzy, nauseous, and you completely lose your ability to stand upright, let alone balance on one hand.
So why aren't breakdancers just throwing up all over the floor?
Because of a phenomenon known as cerebellar plasticity.
Cerebellar plasticity.
Yes. Through thousands upon thousands of hours of exposure to extreme, unnatural rotation, their cerebellum, the part of the brain at the back of the skull that coordinates movement and balance, fundamentally adapts.
It changes.
It learns to recognize those chaotic vestibular signals as normal.
Yeah.
It essentially builds a neurological filter that suppresses the vertigo response, allowing the brain to process spatial reorientation instantly, even while spinning upside down.
They literally train their brains to mute the dizziness alarm.
They do.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
But muting dizziness only solves half the problem, right? If you are spinning upside down in an air flare, your eyes are just seeing a blur of the floor, the ceiling, the crowd, the lights. Your vision is functionally useless. So how do you know exactly where your legs are in space so you can time that 150 millisecond hand swap?
They rely on a heightened state of proprioception.
Proprioceptions.
Right. Proprioception is your body's unconscious ability to sense its location, movements, and actions. It's the mechanism that allows you to close your eyes and perfectly touch your finger to your nose without looking.
But how does the body know where their arm is without seeing it?
Through muscle spindles.
Okay.
These are microscopic sensory receptors embedded deep within the belly of your muscles. They constantly detect changes in how much the muscle is stretched and how fast it is stretching.
I see.
In elite breakdancers, because they cannot rely on vision, what the data calls blind proprioception, Their brain builds a highly accurate, real-time 3D topographical map of their entire body based purely on the tension signals coming from those muscle spindles.
So they can feel that their left leg is at exactly a 45-degree angle behind them, just based on the stretch of their hamstring, without ever looking at it.
Exactly. And this data is processed astonishingly fast. The research highlights a 100 millisecond feedback loop.
100 milliseconds. Let's break that down.
Let's use the hollowback freeze as an example. You are throwing yourself upside down, trying to stick that extreme inverted back bend.
Right.
If your initial launch angle is off by even a few degrees, your center of gravity is going to pull you right over.
You'll fall.
But within 100 milliseconds of your hands touching the floor, your muscle spindles detect that your balance is off.
Yeah.
They fire a signal to the cerebellum, which instantly recalculates the required tension and fires a signal back down to the micromuscles in your wrists and core to adjust and save the balance.
It's auto-correcting faster than conscious thought.
Yes.
But that brings us back to the air flare. If conscious thought is too slow to execute the move and you are relying entirely on blind proprioception, how does the brain actually command the arms to do the catching in 30 milliseconds?
Through the creation of cortical engram.
Cortical engram.
When people casually use the phrase muscle memory, they're usually talking about a vague sense of familiarity. But an engram is a literal, physical rewiring of the brain.
It's not in the muscles at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By drilling a complex movement like an air flare thousands of times, failing, crashing, and adjusting, the brain eventually creates a highly optimized, dedicated neural circuit in the motor cortex.
Wow.
It groups thousands of individual muscle commands into one single cohesive program.
So when a dancer decides to throw an air flare, they aren't consciously thinking, okay, contract the left shoulder, tighten the right oblique, flex the left hip.
No, not at all.
They are just hitting the play button on that specific anagram.
Yes, and the motor cortex automatically executes the wildly complex sequence of muscle firing, bypassing the slow, conscious decision-making process entirely.
Which is the only way to beat that 30 millisecond margin of error.
The absolute only way.
But I have to bring us back to the environment. We aren't talking about executing these engrams in a quiet, padded laboratory.
Like the battle context.
Let's talk about the cognitive load happening simultaneously. You are physically exhausted. Your heart is pounding at 180 beats per minute. Your muscles are screaming from lactic acid buildup.
You're spinning upside down.
You are spinning upside down, ignoring vertigo. And crucially, your auditory cortex is intensely analyzing a funk track you don't know, trying to calculate the exact mathematical probability of when the DJ is going to drop the snare drum so you can perfectly time your freeze.
It is an overwhelming convergence of physical trauma and neurological multitasking.
I mean, think about normal life. If I spend 3 hours answering complex emails and deciding what to have for lunch, I get decision fatigue.
We all do.
My brain feels foggy. The cognitive load required to calculate 787 newtons of force, manage blind proprioception, and analyze syncopated musical rhythms all at the exact same time, it sounds practically superhuman.
It is a profound demonstration of human adaptability. But that extreme level of physiological and neurological tax comes at a very steep cost.
It has to.
The human body is incredibly resilient, but it is not invincible. And because of these extreme, highly specific demands, the life cycle, the training methodology, and the demographics of a breakdancer look completely different than almost any other sport in the world.
Which brings us to the actual human beings behind all this physics. Let's look at the age factor, because gravity and mass play a massive, unforgiving role here.
They really do.
The data shows that the ideal starting age for a breaker is remarkably young, specifically between 7 and 12 years old.
There are two intersecting reasons for this narrow window. The first is neurological, going back to what we just discussed.
Right.
Children in that age bracket possess incredibly high neuroplasticity. Their brains are sponges.
They learn fast.
They are much more adept at forging those complex cortical engrams and rewiring the vestibular system to ignore vertigo than an adult brain, which is already highly specialized and rigid.
But the second reason is pure, brutal physics. It comes back to Isaac Newton. F equals m times a. Force equals mass times acceleration.
Let's picture a 10-year-old child learning to do a headspin or a drop. Their total body mass is very low. Furthermore, their center of gravity is much lower to the ground.
Right.
When they make a mistake and crash, the actual kinetic force impacting their joints is relatively small. Their bones and cartilage can absorb it, recover, and adapt.
But flash forward. What happens if a 25-year-old adult who has never danced before tries to learn an air flare?
The acceleration required to complete the rotation might be the same. But because the adult's mass is double or triple that of the child, the resulting force, the F in the equation, is exponentially higher.
Oh, man.
When that 25-year-old crashes or even just lands heavily on their wrist, the skeletal structure is subjected to loads that can instantly tear ligaments or fracture bones.
So starting early isn't just about getting good, it's a structural requirement.
Yes.
You have to subject your skeletal system to these specific, bizarre loads while you are still growing, so your bone density and your tendinous tissues can literally thicken and adapt in response before you become too heavy.
It is forced skeletal adaptation. But even with that early start, the clock is ticking. The physical life cycle of an elite breaker is defined by a very specific window.
Right.
Peak athletic maturity, where the dancer has the maximum explosive power to execute extreme power moves, combined with a strategic mental maturity to navigate a battle hits roughly between 20 and 30 years old.
But after 30, and especially by the time they hit 35, there is a harsh reality waiting for them. The human body simply cannot sustain nearly 800 newtons of force on the shoulder joints indefinitely.
It just can't. The chronic reality of the discipline sets in.
Yeah.
Unlike gymnasts who perform on spring floors, breakdancers historically and often still practice on hard concrete, linoleum, or thin wood.
So unforgiving.
By their mid-30s, decades of repetitive microtraumas lead to chronic tendinitis, severe joint inflammation, and cartilage degradation.
So a 38-year-old breaker usually isn't trying to throw 10 consecutive air flares. They physically can't.
Right.
But they don't just retire. The data shows how they adapt to survive against younger, faster opponents.
They trade raw, traumatic power for extreme complexity.
Yes. They rely heavily on intricate footwork, highly creative and unusual freezes, and a level of musicality that a 20-year-old simply hasn't developed yet. They use structural wisdom to outsmart raw, kinetic energy.
It's an enforced evolution of personal style dictated by physiology.
Exactly.
But speaking of how physiology dictates style, we have to examine one of the most fascinating demographic shifts in the culture.
Oh, the gender dynamic.
Yes, the evolution of gender dynamics and how it alters the physics on the floor.
This is a massive point in the 2026 landscape. Historically, if we go back to the 1970s Bronx, the scene was overwhelmingly male-dominated, the b-boys. But over the decades, the scene has evolved into a state of absolute parity between b-boys and b-girls. And this wasn't just a cultural trend, it was institutionalized. When breakdance debuted at the Paris Olympics, there was a strict 50-50 split.
Equal spots, equal medals, equal recognition.
But what is biomechanically fascinating to me is observing how the general physiological differences between men and women historically express themselves in the actual vocabulary of the dance.
Right, because you're dealing with different baseline weight distributions.
Exactly. The data notes that historically, b-boys lean very heavily on upper body brute force. Because men generally have a higher average muscle mass in the shoulder girdle and chest, they naturally gravitated toward the explosive aerial power moves.
Used raw strength to bully gravity.
Yeah, bully gravity. Conversely, B-girls, particularly in the earlier eras, developed styles that maximize their specific physiological advantages. Women generally possess greater baseline joint flexibility and, crucially, a naturally lower center of gravity.
So instead of trying to muscle through an air flare, they developed styles featuring hyper-complex footwork.
Fluidity.
Exactly. Incredibly fluid, seamless transitions between moves, and freezes that relied on extreme contortion and precise skeletal stacking rather than just raw shoulder strength.
However, the data highlights a major shift by the time we reach 2026. They call it the catch-up.
The technical gap in power moves has completely evaporated.
It's gone. Elite B-girls are no longer restricted to flexible footwork. They have fully mastered the absolute peak of extreme acrobatics. They are throwing air flares.
They are.
But here is what I find so interesting. How do they do it without that same upper body muscle mass?
Through supreme technical efficiency, where a male dancer might use brute strength to force an imperfect air flare through the transfer window, a top-tier B-girl achieves the same rotation through flawless biomechanical techniques.
So they just do it better.
Essentially, yes. They optimize their momentum transfer, their joint angles, and their hip torque so perfectly that they compensate entirely for any deficit in raw muscle bulk. The output is identical, but the mechanics of the engine are highly optimized.
Which is critical because the judging criteria does not care about your physiology. In 2026, both B-boys and B-girls are judged under the exact same system.
Yes, the trivium judging system.
But this prompts a massive question for me, and it really goes to the heart of how this is even considered a sport.
What's the question?
Let's say you are judging a battle. On one side, you have a dancer whose style relies on explosive, brute force, high-flying air flares. On the other side, you have a dancer whose style is entirely grounded, relying on incredibly complex, hyperflexible, fluid footwork that perfectly mimics the bass line of the song.
Right.
How do you possibly judge that? How do you score explosive power versus artistic fluidity on the exact same scorecard? Isn't that just judging apples and oranges?
You have just articulated the central defining tension of modern breakdancing.
Really?
Yes. It is the collision of a highly subjective, culturally rooted art form with the cold, objective requirements of a global sport. And understanding how the 2026 landscape attempts to reconcile this clash of styles requires us to look at the current state of the global scene.
Let's step into the present day, the 2026 landscape. Because since the Olympic debut, the standard hasn't just gone up incrementally, it has skyrocketed into an entirely new stratosphere. The terminology they use in the data is the era of impossible combos.
We have moved far beyond isolated movements. A decade ago, executing a clean air flare was the climax of a dancer's round.
It was the big finale.
Today, in 2026, an air flare is merely a transition step to get into something harder. The meta is defined by continuous, uninterrupted, hybrid combinations.
One of the concepts that really stuck out to me is power to freeze. We talked earlier about how hard a freeze is, but now top athletes are going from high-speed, dynamic rotations like spinning continuously on their head at maximum RPM and stopping instantly into a precarious, one-handed freeze.
And they are doing it with absolutely no setup steps. They go from 100 miles per hour to 0 in a millisecond.
The eccentric deceleration capacity required to stop that much rotational momentum instantly without snapping your wrist is staggering.
And alongside that physical escalation, there is a massive stylistic evolution called neo-fusion.
Right. Neo-fusion is where the boundaries of the culture start to blur. Breakers are taking the traditional four pillars, the top rock, drop, footwork, and power moves, and they are seamlessly weaving in movements that have absolutely nothing to do with hip-hop.
It's wild to watch. You are seeing athletes incorporate the sweeping floor work of contemporary dance, the flexibility of circus arts, the deceptive kicks of capoeira, and the rigid stances of traditional martial arts.
The physical vocabulary has become infinitely more abstract. And to achieve and perfect this level of multidisciplinary complexity, the top athletes are no longer just practicing on cardboard in a basement.
The training has become clinical.
This is where it gets crazy. The research highlights the active use of AI biomechanical analysis.
Oh yeah, it's heavily digitized now.
National teams are filming their athletes' runs, and software is laying a digital skeleton over the video. It maps their exact center of gravity in real time, calculates their precise joint angles during a jump, and measures their rotational velocity.
They're using data to shave 5 milliseconds off their transfer windows. It is the literal digitization of the dance.
And that extreme clinical precision extends directly into how they interact with the music. In 2026, the judges demand what is referred to as surgical musicality.
Surgical musicality.
It used to be enough to just hit that heavy snare drum. Not anymore. Now the judges expect you to physically illustrate every microsound in a multi-layered track.
Right.
If the DJ drops a track with a heavy drum beat, but there's a faint, rapid synthesizer trill buried in the background audio, the judges expect to see your fingers rapidly fluttering to perfectly match that synth, while the rest of your body is spinning upside down to the drum beat.
The cognitive and physical demands are quite frankly absurd.
They really are.
And these specific demands have created a very distinct geopolitical map of dominance in 2026. If we look at the World Dance Sport Federation rankings and the outcomes of the major events like the Red Bull BC1 finals, we can see how different regions have adapted to these demands.
I really want to dig into this global map because it's fascinating how geography and national training systems have shaped human physiology differently. First up, the data points to Japan as the undisputed leaders of the current era.
Japan's dominance is built on a foundation of absolute, unyielding technical perfection.
Perfection.
They have institutionalized the training from a very young age, resulting in executions that are clinically flawless. But their true, terrifying power lies in their dominance of the youth, or U16 categories.
They are essentially a factory for prodigies.
They really are.
You look at stars dominating the 2025 and 2026 podiums. You have B-boy Essen and B-girl Rico, who secured a historic double victory at the Tokyo final.
Incredible talent.
And you have seasoned athletes, like Shigekicks. When you watch Shigekicks, it's not just that he spins fast, it's the robotic precision. Every single freeze stops exactly on a microbeat with zero wobble. It's like watching a machine.
While Japan leads through surgical technique, the United States maintains its formidable presence through a deep connection to heritage.
Right, the U.S. is the birthplace. They have the historical DNA. But it's not just nostalgia, is it?
No, not at all. Athletes like Victor and Jeffro keep the American flag at the top by combining that original, foundational flavor with massive, high-level athleticism. They have a certain unpredictable swagger that the highly regimented Japanese style sometimes lacks.
Then we shift to Europe, which is defined by infrastructure. The European scene is deeply organized, supported by robust national federations.
France is a massive engine for this. They have heavily structured competitive circuits and Olympic medalists like Danny Dan, whose style is incredibly explosive.
And the Netherlands have built a reputation as the technical puzzle solvers of the scene. You have legends like Menno, who practically invented a whole new vocabulary of fluid rolling transitions, and the new guard like Li Lu, keeping that intellectual style alive.
And we absolutely have to mention Lithuania.
Yes, Lithuania.
Which has become a powerhouse in the female division entirely through B-girl Nika, who is systematically appearing in the finals of every major global tournament.
But the real disruption to the established order is coming from the emerging powers. These are the nations that are rapidly shifting the balance of power with completely unorthodox approaches.
Kazakhstan is the perfect example of this. You have B-boy Amir.
Oh, weird.
When you watch Amir dance, his biomechanics look completely alien. He utilizes this unpredictable, hyper-flexible originality. He contorts his body into shapes that don't even look like standard breakdance, making it incredibly hard for opponents to counter his style.
Meanwhile, China has taken a drastically different approach, pouring massive state investment into specialized Olympic-style training centers.
They are aggressively dominating the youth categories with athletes like B-girl 671, who possesses overwhelming power and is clearly being prepped to sweep the Youth Olympics.
And finally, you have Canada. Largely on the back of Phil Wizard, who blends extreme character and theatricality with incredibly intricate footwork, Canada has become such a central hub that the late 2026 World Final is slated to be held in Toronto.
This global spread is fascinating because the different styles these regions prioritize, Japan's clinical technique, America's foundation, Kazakhstan's weird originality, all feed directly into the ultimate philosophical debate that is tearing the culture apart in 2026.
It is the eternal debate between art and sport. This right here is the soul of this entire deep dive.
It is.
Because these two philosophies are entirely fundamentally at odds with each other. On one side, you have the sport philosophy. This is the faction pushing the Olympic legacy.
The sport side demands transparency and quantifiable metrics. It relies entirely on the trivium judging system. In a battle, judges sit with digital tablets equipped with sliders. They must objectively score athletes on 5 fixed criteria: technique, execution, musicality, vocabulary, and originality.
The sports side treats the dancers exactly like Olympic gymnasts. They advocate for strict nutritional diets, plyometric jump training, dedicated physiotherapists, and optimizing lactic acid thresholds. It is entirely about peak, measurable athletic performance.
But the opposing faction is the art philosophy. This side is fiercely protective of the discipline's raw cultural roots. They represent the cipher culture.
The cipher being the spontaneous circle of people where dancers just jump in and battle for respect, not for points on a tablet.
Exactly. The art side believes breakdance is a language of expression. They are searching for flavor, that completely unique, undeniable personal style.
So to the artists, a movement that is technically imperfect, maybe a little sloppy, but is highly original and perfectly captures the emotion of the music, is worth infinitely more than a textbook, robotic, perfectly executed spin that lacks soul.
They fundamentally reject the premise that you can assign a numerical value to human expression.
But the brutal reality of the 2026 circuit is that you can no longer choose to be just an artist or just an athlete. To become a world champion, you must embody the absolute synthesis of both.
The data summarizes the synthesis with a perfect 2026 maxim: train like an athlete, dance like an artist.
Train like an athlete, dance like an artist. It means You must possess the cardiovascular capacity and the pain tolerance of an Olympic decathlete. You must be able to withstand the blinding burn of lactic acid and absorb 787 newtons of kinetic force into your shoulder without wincing.
But the exact moment you step out onto the floor,
Mm.
you have to hide all of that effort.
You have to make the biologically impossible look casual. You have to smile through the biomechanical trauma so that the audience and the judges don't see the struggle, the physics, or the pain. They only see the music and the style.
That is the ultimate illusion of the modern champion. They are managing extreme skeletal trauma and overwhelming neurological overload and making it look like a spontaneous party.
It's like that old analogy of a duck gliding on a pond.
Oh, yeah.
Above the water, it looks completely serene and artistic. But underneath the surface, it's just paddling furiously to stay afloat.
That's a perfect comparison.
It is genuinely hard to wrap my mind around all of this. Just summarizing this journey, we have gone from teenagers in the 1970s Bronx, navigating systemic poverty by finding a nonviolent way to express dominance on a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
To a highly scientific, AI-analyzed, Olympic-level discipline in 2026. We are looking at human beings who routinely withstand nearly 800 newtons of force on a single joint, mathematically calculate the exact millisecond a snare drum will hit, and actively rewire their cerebellum to avoid passing out from vertigo.
It is a profound testament to the sheer adaptability of the human nervous system. We created a cultural environment that demanded we figure out how to fly, and over 50 years, our biology slowly but surely figured out the mechanics to make it happen.
So I want you to remember this. The next time you see a bringer, whether it's a kid spinning in a cipher on a street corner or a world champion battling on a massive screen in Tokyo or Toronto, remember what is actually happening under the surface. You aren't just watching a dance.
You're watching a real-time masterclass in physics, in neuroplasticity, and in extreme human endurance. You're watching a human being actively hack their own anatomy.
It really forces you to respect the intelligence and the resilience of the body.
It absolutely does.
But looking at all this data, looking at the AI optimization, the sheer skeletal toll, and the 30-millisecond margins of error, it leaves me with a deeply provocative thought. The human body does have a hard, unbreakable physiological limit.
It does.
Bones can only take so much impact before they literally shatter. Muscles can only contract so fast before the neurons simply cannot fire any quicker. So what happens to breakdancing when we finally hit the absolute ceiling of physical capability?
When we mathematically cannot spin any faster or fly any higher without breaking our own bodies.
Exactly. How will the next generation invent the future of this art form? If the physics are maxed out, where does the chaos go next?